Well, then thank you very much for your kind introduction. And yes, my name is Monika Jones, and I have the great pleasure to talk to the co-founder and the chief strategy officer of Airbnb, and he's also the chairman of Airbnb China, Nathan Blecharzyk. So very good to have you with us. Our program, of course, promises that we will now get insights from you on travel trends and the role of hosting when travel hopefully recovers soon. Let's start with the current situation and your assessment. How would you say has the pandemic changed travel behaviors?
Well, I think during lockdown, this has been very difficult on people over the last year. I think there's a yearning to reconnect with family, reconnect with friends. And so I think there's a lot of pent up travel demand. I think when this travel demand emerges, first of all, it's going to be based on when restrictions are lifted. We saw that in the UK this past week when there was an announcement about restrictions being lifted later on in April. We saw a 3x increase in searches from citizens of the UK. So I think it's just a matter of time, but there is a wave of travel coming. I think it's going to be different though, because historically it's all been about, I'd say, mass tourism. It's been about popular destinations, seeing the Eiffel Tower, et cetera. I think people are really particularly yearning though to connect with a family, connect with friends. I also think that health and safety is going to be top of mind, right? Airbnb has put in a lot of effort into educating our hosts about the best practices around cleaning. We have an enhanced cleaning training program and standard that we've rolled out. And when surveying potential guests and travelers, they've said that staying in a home, 2 to 1 makes them feel more comfortable than staying in a hotel. I think 15% of Germans said they'd be comfortable staying in a hotel. I think about 32% of Germans said they'd be comfortable staying at an Airbnb or at a home, I should say. So I think that's going to be top of mind for people. I think folks will be a little bit more flexible with the travel plans. So a lot of people are working remotely. And so I think, people won't be so focused on just the weekends. There's going to be a lot more flexibility to go on a longer trip and maybe work remotely should it be necessary.
Right, and from what you've just described, what's happened and what you expect will happen, how is Airbnb responding to the impact of the pandemic?
Yes, well, this has been very difficult for people and for the travel and tourism industry as a whole, for sure. In the depth of the pandemic, when it first emerged, we were estimating that our revenue in 2020 would be down 50%. In fact, it was only down 30%. And while that's still down relative to our peer set, that is a much better outcome than our peer set and than we expected. So we've been very resilient through what we've experienced so far. And we also expect that this resiliency and adaptability will serve us well going forward. Again, I think there's going to be a strong desire to be able to stay in homes because of the autonomy that allows, the kind of ability to determine who you engage with, because I think there will be lingering concerns about being in crowds until this is well behind us. And so I think that will help Airbnb. We've also seen that, around this idea of flexibility, the fact that, people are going to be more flexible with their dates. We've launched functionality that allows you to better search and indicate that, it's not so much about checking in on this date, but you can specify a range of dates. And so we've actually done a lot to change our search interface to accommodate guests. Also over this period, we've really focused on our hosts as well. We've realized that this is what makes Airbnb so special, the ability to have a local person introduce you to their surroundings, to their home. And so this is really the secret sauce of Airbnb. And we've really doubled down on working with our hosts. We've launched a host advisory committee so that we can make sure we're hearing their voices and incorporating their feedback. We've actually launched a host endowment, which is funded with 9 million shares of Airbnb stock, which are doing quite well. And so this is a very valuable endowment that will be for the benefit of hosts going forward. So we've done a lot to make our host community even more vibrant ahead of what we expect to be a lot of demand this summer.
Right. I just have to point out you're in a very nice setting right now, a very nice environment, which makes me want to travel soon again.
Well, of course, this is an Airbnb, and this is an Airbnb I stayed at back in 2014 in Bali. It's a treehouse.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, you just mentioned the financial results, and they came in so much better than expected, of course. But of course, it was the first time that you present financial results since your IPO last year. And the fact that they turn out pretty well, all things considered. Does this make you feel positive about the future?
Well, I think the financial results demonstrate the resiliency of the business model. And again, last year, 2020 was a very difficult year, but relative to our peer set, we weathered it extremely well. And I think it demonstrates the adaptability of the model going forward. I think what we expect going forward is that people will still value having a home, that people will still be biased towards traveling nearby, which Airbnb does very well. I mean, we can accommodate international travel, and this is, as you mentioned behind me, an Airbnb in Bali, and it's a popular destination. But we'll see how the availability of flights and all this will be under such large demand this summer. And so even if people want to stay more locally, I think this bodes well for Airbnb.
Right. And of course, this IPO also went hand in hand with Airbnb gaining a lot of financial power. What are you going to do with that money?
Well, we've always had a big vision for Airbnb, and we're 13 years into the company. But at the same time, I still think it's just the beginning in terms of what's possible. And so there's a lot of ambition there. I think the good news is we have the balance sheet to support that ambition, to support ongoing innovation. And so I can't, reveal any specific plans or announcements, but I would just stress that, the Airbnb today is not the Airbnb of tomorrow. I think we'll continue to innovate, continue to reinvent, and I'm tremendously excited to continue to be a part of that story.
Yeah, and that story hopefully will continue in a very tangible way for everybody. You mentioned earlier that you expect certainly certain, things we associate with a pandemic now, like individual holidays or sort of being more isolated and not in big crowds, will probably stay with us for a while. So, with the business strategic thinking, which segments do you think are the most likely to grow when the pandemic hopefully is over?
Yes, well, I certainly think business travel is forever changed. I don't think we're going to see business travel the way it used to exist. Business travel will be reserved for longer trips where there needs to be kind of ongoing collaboration. But for a one-day visit to have a meeting, I think we found that Zoom is a much more efficient way to do that. And so I do think there's going to be a vast reduction in business travel that is, for 1 or 2 nights here and there. Maybe the longer-term business travel will persist. On the leisure side of things, there's just huge pent-up demand, and I think with a more flexible work possibilities, which I think will persist. I think for some segment of the workforce, there won't be the necessity to come into the office 5 days a week. This won't apply to all jobs, but for some jobs, a meaningful percentage of the population, a double-digit percentage of the population, there might be a hybrid model. Maybe you come into the office 3 days a week, but that makes for the possibility of some long weekends and the ability to work while you're traveling. And so I think we're seeing the blending of living and working, and that's a really exciting trend. I'd also just say that with this pent-up demand, there's going to be a real need for more accommodation options, right? If everybody wants to travel at the same time, there's going to be a lack of places to stay, whether it's traditional accommodation or even Airbnb homes. And so I actually think now is going to be a really great opportunity for individuals who have heard about Airbnb, are interested in Airbnb, to actually sign up and become a host because it's a powerful economic opportunity. People who've been impacted, perhaps laid off their job, unemployed, this is a great opportunity to earn income off the home that you have. And we even seen during the pandemic that we've had, many people join the platform for the first time. In Germany, for example, over the course of the pandemic, new hosts who started during the pandemic and who have only one home, their own home, have made 18 million euros just during the pandemic, first-time hosts. In the UK, that number is 40 million pounds. Globally, the number is $1 billion. New hosts during the pandemic have made $1 billion on the Airbnb platform. And now that the pandemic is hopefully concluding, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for new hosts to come to the platform and participate.
Right. I mean, the pandemic certainly taught us to value our home, to feel safe, to feel cozy. And that probably also plays in a big
and
role.
It's also the greatest, the most valuable asset most people have. And so it's not just a home, but it can also be a path towards financial freedom or financial mobility.
Yeah. Talking about one more topic, because not everybody is a fan of Airbnb. I'm sure you're familiar with a certain reservation of local population, local politicians sometimes taking issue. Where do you see how will the relationship between Airbnb and that part of society, how will that develop?
Yeah, well, we've been working very closely with governments around the world. Again, Airbnb's in over 200 countries and territories and 100,000 cities. But we've worked closely with hundreds of governments to implement and help enforce their local rules. And we absolutely think there should be local rules, and we support those efforts. And we've made a lot of progress. We launched something this past year we call the City Portal, which is a unique, one-of-a-kind solution to basically capture all the functionality governments need to effectively engage with Airbnb, whether it's on the topic of enforcement and making sure that the guidelines for who can host can effectively be enforced, or whether it be around data sharing and having the data insights that they need to understand the impact of Airbnb, whether it be around neighbors and kind of noise and nuisance issues that might arise. We have a hotline for dealing with that. And so we've basically captured, all the substantive topics that come up, with Airbnb as it pertains to communities. And we've put it into a very innovative software solution that is now becoming widely available to governments all over the world. It's something that we can basically create a login, a username and a password, and governments get access to really innovative functionality to basically achieve, the best of both worlds, that they can have have the rules upheld, but also make sure that they do so in a way that, Airbnb can benefit their constituencies. So this is something I'm really excited about, and is, an innovation. I think innovation is really important in solving these challenges, that we shouldn't just resort back to the old way things were done, that we have to embrace the new, and do it in a thoughtful way. The second thing I'll say is, as a result of the pandemic, we together need to rebuild tourism, right? It's a really important pillar of the economy. And so we've worked now with many governments and destination marketing organizations, right? Tourism bureaus, to help rebuild tourism by providing data. Data meaning trends about what we're seeing the new travel look like. And this is really important as they think about how they market themselves, to understand how the consumer preferences have changed. And we expect that over the course of this year, we'll be working with 100 different direct marketing, destination marketing organizations to do this. So I think we have a broad set of capabilities and ways in which we can work with governments.
Well, brilliant. And especially, rebuilding obviously is one of the main themes of this year's ITB. And what I get from you is certainly communication, and even partnership with other players is becoming even more important. Nathan Blecharzyk, obviously co-founder of Airbnb, Chief Strategy Officer of Airbnb, and Chairman of Airbnb China. It was great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And with that, it's back to our ITB Berlin NOW studio.